I invite the member for Kelowna Mission to lead the House in prayer or reflection.
Holy God, we humbly seek your wisdom and guidance. Grant us clarity, courage, and a compassionate heart to serve you with integrity and honor in all the decisions we make. May our work together reflect your love and justice, bringing peace and prosperity to our communities. Help us to engage with respect, collaborate effectively, and achieve outcomes that ultimately glorify your name. In faith and trust, we commit this day to you. Amen.
Introduction by members. Minister of Health.
Thank you very much, Honourable Speaker. I know you'll be delighted to hear Bonne journée de la francophonie. Happy BC Francophone Day, Honourable Speaker. Aujourd'hui, nous célébrons la journée de la francophonie. Today we celebrate BC Francophone Day, and I'd like to introduce some very important guests who are joining us to celebrate la journée de la francophonie. Geoffrey de Nanteuil, the Honorary Consul General of France in Victoria, and his son Pierre are here. Thank you for being here and representing la France. Marie-Nicole Dubois, the Présidente de la Fédération des francophones de la Colombie-Britannique, qui représente 49 organismes francophones repartis dans toute la province. The Federation of Francophones represents 49 organizations all over British Columbia. It's wonderful to have them here. Also, Claudia Leclerc, Geneviève Poitras, and Sophie Audet of the Conseil Jeunesse Francophone, who will be recognized today, and the many representatives of BC Francophone organizations who are joining us today at lunch, and we hope that all members of the House will take the opportunity to join us. And so, on behalf of the House, I want to welcome everybody to the Hall of Honor at noon, and also ask everyone to make our guests welcome. And it was close. And we also, members on all sides of the House this morning, had the opportunity to meet with representatives of Canadian Parents for French, BC and Yukon branch. And I hope members won't hold it against this outstanding organization that I used to work for them. But I wanted to acknowledge Alex Hughes, the president, Jason Howe, the executive director, Nancy Taylor, who used to work with back in the day, the vice president of the organization, members, as I say, from all sides, member for North Van Seymour, the member for Nanaimo, North Nanaimo, the member for Kelowna Lake Country, the Minister of Forests, my colleague, the member for Langley. We're all there this morning amongst many others, and we all wish all of our guests today welcome et bonne journée de la francophonie.
Member for Skeena.
Mr. Speaker, in the House, we have a frequent visitor that's returned to visit us again. He comes down to watch our question period, he comes down to watch our estimates and our 2-minute statements, which he loves. John Coleman, a strong advocate for Native issues as well as contractor issues and labor issues out in Cowichan, and I think we're going to see him a lot more in the next couple of months. Would the House please welcome back John Coleman from Cowichan.
Minister of Forests.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Joining us in the members' gallery this morning is His Excellency David Cohen, Ambassador of the United States to Canada. Accompanying him is the Consul General of the United States at Vancouver, James DeHart. This is Ambassador Cohen's first official visit to Victoria. Yesterday, he had the opportunity to meet with Her Honour at the Government House and later with the Premier and the Minister of Finance. The relationship between Canada and the United States, of course, is deep, and indeed British Columbia is deep and enduring. Would the House please make them feel welcome?
Member for Kelowna Mission.
Thank you so much, Honourable Speaker. Well, I would like to welcome to the House a force from the island here, Mr. Tech Manas. If you've met Tech, you know his passion for the business community as a Duncan Cowichan Chamber board member, Community Futures board member, Fringe Festival board member, and the BC Forest Discovery Board liaison, but most well known as a North Cowichan City Councillor. So thank you so much. Would the House please join me in welcoming him to the House?
Member for Kelowna Lake Country.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker, and I would like to join with the Minister of Health to welcome all the representatives from the Francophone community in our province pour la Journée de la Francophonie. As the Minister said, we will be celebrating that today in the Hall of Honour. It actually falls on March the 20th, if I'm correct, next week. But since we're not going to be here and celebrating it together, we'll be celebrating it at home. I must add, though, for me, Mr. Speaker, the Journée de la Francophonie is every day in my house because I married a French-Canadian woman, so we make sure that we speak French as much as possible. So on behalf of the official opposition, welcome to la Fédération des francophones, des francophiles, and la Fédération des parents for francophones. There's over 300,000 of them in this province, and it's growing all the time. Please make them feel very welcome.
Minister of Jobs and Economic Development.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. I rise this morning to pay my respects to an incredible woman, Dr. Connie Eves, who passed away last Thursday, March 7th, after her battle with cancer. Dr. Eves was an inspiration and mentor to generations of female scientists, providing significant contributions to cancer and stem cell research. She was also the co-founder of the Terry Fox Laboratory with her husband, Dr. Alan Eves, in Vancouver. Our scientific community is collectively richer for her efforts throughout the years. I would like to share some words written by her son David, which perfectly sum up the person she was. I shared my mother. She was as much a parent to the family of scientists she helped raise as she was to her maternal children. When asked about her success, she opined, "If I look back at my own career, I think some of the proudest moments are watching the successful defenses of every PhD I have ever trained as a supervisor." Maybe nothing fazed her, and rarely was she over-sentimental or emotional, but there was never any doubt that love and family were at the heart of her approach to science and to life. And there was a lot of love, more than enough to go around. On behalf of all of us in this House, the People's House, condolences to the Eves family and the BC scientific community on this monumental loss.
Member for Saanich North and Island.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Speaker. It's my pleasure to introduce today a group of firefighters that I've had the pleasure of meeting, and their advocacy over my time as an MLA. These firefighters have tirelessly advocated for the well-being and protection of their profession. Could the House please welcome Todd Shearling, President of the BC Professional Firefighters Association, Brian Katniss, the Secretary-Treasurer of the BC Firefighters Association, Alex Levitt, the President of the Central Saanich Firefighters Association, and Warren Nguyen's of the Salt Spring Firefighters Association. Both Alex and Warren have committed to protecting and serving the residents within Saanich North and the islands, and I raise my hands to them specifically, but to all firefighters who put their lives on the line and risk themselves in order to protect us. Could the House please make them and all of their colleagues feel very welcome today?
Minister of Children and Family Development.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I have 6 guests today, and they're among my cutest constituents. My daughter Eve and my son Asher are here, and they're joined by their friends Rowan, Simone, and Isaiah. And they're here to see how our democracy works or to skip school for the morning. I know that all of my colleagues in this House know what this job requires of us, and my gratitude to my babies for their patience and love and support as I do this work. Also wrangling these 7, 8, 9, and 10-year-olds is my partner, Rob, who is taking the year to look after my kids and be my sign guy, and then we'll return to the Ministry of Finance. And appreciate the opportunity to introduce them, and hope the House will help me make all 6 of them very welcome.
Member for Langley East.
Honourable Speaker, I'd just like to take this opportunity to introduce a constituent of mine who is joining us in the gallery, Sushant Kadam, who is a MBA student at Trinity Western University. I had the privilege of meeting him recently. He came to my office with some fantastic ideas related to community enrichment. I know he's keen to learn more about the BC Legislature, and my amazing constituency assistant Carly Hogan's joining him today and giving him a tour. So if you see him in the hallways, please say hi. I was wondering if everyone in the legislature today can please join me in making him feel very welcome.
Member for Chilliwack-Kent.
Thank you so much, Honourable Speaker. Earlier this week, I introduced my constituency advisors who are here for the week to see things in person, and I would be remiss if today I didn't take the opportunity to introduce somebody who supports those who support what we do. And I would like to welcome Kelly Moon, and of course, constituency advisor Lorna Moon, her partner, to the chamber. And if you see them around, please make them most welcome.
Minister of Post-Secondary Education.
Thank you, Speaker. Today here in the Chamber, we're joined by members of the Alma Mater Society of UBC Vancouver. The Alma Mater Society of UBC Vancouver is a student union that represents 61,000 undergraduate and graduate students. We have Joshua Kim, Vice President, External Affairs, and Bandel Vikas Kahana, Associate Vice President of External Affairs. They've been in Victoria since yesterday, meeting with groups all over government with priorities such as accessible transit, affordable post-secondary education, preventing sexualized and gender-based violence on campuses. As elected officials and representatives of their members, I want to thank them for their leadership, and I look forward to speaking with them this afternoon. Please join me in welcoming them.
Member for Nanaimo North Cochin.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like the members to help me welcome Tom Harkins, who's in the gallery. Tom is a devoted BC NDP supporter who's always there at the parades, at every booth, at every fair, but most notably, he is the bedrock of the sign crew. And Tom builds the toughest signs, and they're always up first and down first. We're proud of everything he does. Thank you very much, Tom, for all that you do.
Minister of Transportation.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. It's a pleasure to introduce a guest who's in the gallery with us today, Linda Shinton. She's in town visiting her granddaughter, Rosie. She hasn't been to Victoria in 20 years, and I understand she's immensely enjoying herself here. She's a former librarian, really enjoying Victoria's reputation as the book capital of our province, as well as a capital in every other way. And she is also known as the mother of my ministerial advisor, Joey Mitchell. So will the House make Linda most welcome? I would also, with your indulgence, Mr. Speaker, also welcome Ambassador Cohen to the Chamber, as well as the Minister of Transportation and Infrastructure. We appreciate the time he took to tour the Belleville International Ferry Terminal this morning. This is obviously a crucial link between our two countries. A very vital economic link and a very important maritime border between our countries, and it remains an enduring service between Vancouver Island and British Columbia and great communities like Port Angeles and Seattle. So we thank them for being here and showing interest in investments that we're making as a government that are going to strengthen the ties even further between our countries.
Member for Skeena.
Mr. Speaker, an incredible accomplishment in Skeena. Not one, but all three young Terrace hockey teams have won their zone playoffs and will be representing Terrace in their provincial tournaments. Under 18s will be making the long trip to Nelson. Under 15s won the zones against Smithers, guaranteeing them a spot in their provincials taking place in Quesnel. Under 13s won their zones against Smithers as well, and they will be going to Aldergrove for their provincials. Congratulations to the coaches, the parents, the supporters, and of course, good luck to all the players. Your hard work and dedication has definitely paid off. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Madam Clerk.
Introduction of bills.
Attorney General.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I have the honor to present a message from Her Honor, the Lieutenant Governor.
Her Honor, the Lieutenant Governor transmits herewith Bill number 12, entitled Public Health Accountability and Cost Recovery Act 2024, and recommend the same to the Legislative Assembly. Minister.
I move that the bill be introduced and read a first time now. Mr. Speaker, I'm pleased to introduce the Public Health Cost Recovery Act. This bill follows the success of the Tobacco Damages and Healthcare Cost Recovery Act and the Opioid Damages and Healthcare Cost Recovery Act to provide a generally applicable litigation-based way for government to recover a broad range of health-related expenditures from wrongdoers. It will allow government to sue wrongdoers regardless of if they are individuals or corporations or other entities who either cause or contribute to the disease, illness, or injury, or the risk of disease, illness, or injury. Currently, the costs of some wrongdoers are covered by the province and not the wrongdoer. This bill is intended to hold wrongdoers accountable for their harmful conduct, including the promotion, marketing, and distribution of harmful products. This will shift the financial burden of public health harms from the province to the wrongdoer. By shifting the financial burden in this way, this bill will help protect people living in British Columbia by encouraging responsible action that does not promote profit above the health, safety, and well-being of the people of British Columbia.
Members, the question is first reading of the bill. All those in favor indicate aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Minister.
Speaker, I move that the bill be placed on the orders of the day for the second reading at the next sitting of the House after today.
You have heard the question. All those in favor indicate aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. House Leader of the Third Party.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move that a bill entitled the Firefighter Protection Act, of which notice has been given in my name on the order paper, be introduced and read a first time now. Mr. Speaker, last week we met with members of the British Columbia Professional Firefighters Association. They advanced several points of advocacy for the provincial government. One of those is addressed in this bill. Polyfluoroalkyls, or PFAS, are compounds that are in firefighter personal protective gear and fire suppression foams. The advances in protective gear offers frontline firefighters short-term protection. However, the compounds that provide extra protection have been shown to have long-term negative health consequences. We've been willing to support firefighters once they have cancer, Mr. Speaker, but let's take action to prevent cancer in the first place. The Vancouver Fire Department has already begun implementing PFAS-free uniforms. Now I call on the province to show leadership by setting provincial standards and a timeline for fire services to limit firefighters' exposure to PFAS in their uniforms and foams. We need to ensure that we do not create a two-tiered system where large urban fire services with resources are able to protect their first responders, while smaller, rural, mostly volunteer services are not. The lives of all our firefighters must be a priority over cost, Mr. Speaker. This bill sets a timeline for the discontinued use of PFAS in firefighters' uniforms and fire suppression foams, and standards for wash and storage protocols and facilities. Creates equity for firefighters no matter where they serve, so we can look to them and their family members and say we're doing all we can to protect them and their loved ones. Let's pass this bill and give our fire departments the fiscal tools they need to ensure their facilities and gear protect their professional and volunteer members. Mr. Speaker, when the call goes out, our firefighters across the province answer. They put their well-being in danger to respond. Now it's our turn.
Member, the question is first reading of the bill. All those in favor indicate aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Member.
Mr. Speaker, I move that the bill be placed on the orders of the day for the second reading in the next sitting of the House after today.
You have heard the question. All those in favor indicate aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Madam Clerk.
Statements by members.
Member for West Vancouver, Capilano.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As spring approaches, Nowruz, the Persian New Year, brings with it the promise of renewal and warmth. This celebration, rich in history and tradition, is not just a marker of the new season, but it's an expression of hope, unity, and regeneration of life. Now, for 13 days, Mr. Speaker, Nowruz brings us colorful celebrations that remind us of nature's and our own new beginnings. It's a time when our North Shore community and countless other communities across BC gather to welcome the seasonal shift and the start of New Year with the sun. Our local celebrations are a testament to the diversity and cultural richness of our region. From the fire-jumping festivals that symbolize purification and renewal, to storytelling and craft sessions that connect us to ancient tales and traditions, Nowruz on the North Shore is a mosaic of activities that invite participation from all. This year, we have the unique privilege of hosting an array of events, from the traditional half-scene displays in our libraries to engaging educational programs that delve into the history and cultural significance of Nowruz. I'd like to highlight just two of those events. On Sunday, March 24th, you can visit Minova, our museum and archives of the North Shore, with drop-in activities and storytelling and craft sessions with Roshana School. And then on March 28th, the Polygon Gallery will have handmade treasures from local Persian vendors,
You'll be able to savor complimentary Nowruz delights. You can take a Farsi language exhibition tour, watch a performance, and enjoy refreshments throughout the evening. So, Mr. Speaker, let's commit to fostering a culture of understanding and respect, to celebrating our differences, and to building a future together that honors the traditions and contributions of all. So happy Nowruz to you and your loved ones. May this new year bring you all health, happiness, and prosperity to our community and beyond. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Member for Chilliwack-Kent.
Monsieur le Président, chaque année, la Colombie-Britannique célèbre le 20 mars comme la Journée de la Francophonie. Mr. Speaker, each year BC celebrates March 20th as la Journée de la Francophonie. La Colombie-Britannique occupe une place particulière dans le cœur de nombreux résidents francophones. Pour beaucoup d'entre nous, c'est notre province, notre maison, et ce depuis des générations. British Columbia holds a special place in the hearts of many French-speaking residents. To many of us, it's our province, our home, and it has been for generations. En plus de compter plusieurs milliers de francophones, la Colombie-Britannique accueille de nombreuses personnes d'expression française du Canada et de l'étranger venues visiter, étudier ou travailler ici ensemble, contribuant à la richesse sociale, culturelle, linguistique et économique de la province. In addition to being home to thousands of French-speaking residents, British Columbia welcomes many French-speaking Canadians, international visitors, students, and workers, all of whom contribute to the social, cultural, linguistic, and economic richness of the province. Plus tard aujourd'hui, lors de l'heure du dîner, nous prendrons le temps de célébrer notre francophonie et en particulier, nous célébrons nos jeunes francophones. Later today, during the lunch hour, we will take time to celebrate our francophonie, and in particular, we will celebrate our francophone youth. Les jeunes représentent plus que notre avenir, plus que l'innovation, le progrès et l'espoir. Les jeunes sont au centre de nos familles. Ils sont aussi au centre de nombreuses discussions et priorités que nous poursuivons dans cette Assemblée. Youth represent more than our future, more than innovation, more than progress and hope. They are at the center of our families. They are also at the center of the many discussions and priorities we pursue in this House. Aujourd'hui, alors que le drapeau francophone de la Colombie-Britannique affiche fièrement ses symboles sur le mât à l'extérieur de cet édifice, je vous invite à réfléchir sur la contribution de la francophonie à notre belle province. Today, as the francophone flag of British Columbia proudly displays its symbols on the flagpole outside of this building, I invite you to reflect on the contribution of the francophonie to our beautiful province. Bonne journée de la francophonie à toutes et à tous.
Member for Peace River North.
Yeah, thanks, Honourable Speaker. Fort St. John, like most communities in BC, has seen a recent upturn in break-ins, thefts, and vandalism. One woman in Fort St. John, whose husband owns a plumbing business that had been broken into on a nearly weekly basis, decided it was time to stop complaining and do something. Jackie Miranda got in touch with the local RCMP and, with their advice and guidance, began the Citizens on Patrol Fort St. John last summer. Citizens on Patrol works in collaboration with the RCMP, acting as their extended eyes and ears, and the group already has 65 volunteers. The volunteers go through an in-depth background police check. They use their own vehicles, armed with nothing more than high-vis vests and flashlights as they drive around in pairs for about 2 hours. They keep their eyes and ears peeled for any suspicious activity using a special app that conveys information to the RCMP. In fact, the Fort St. John RCMP has reported a decline in crime since the start of Citizens on Patrol, and there have been a number of notable happenings. In fact, it's suspected that a theft was deterred late one night when a large paving job was in progress. The patrol came across a flat deck truck that was backed up to a skid steer that belonged to the paving crew. When the patrol showed up with their headlights, the guys jumped into their pickup and raced off. Another time on patrol in an industrial area, in the middle of the night, a suspicious person was noticed at 3 different locations throughout the evening. The RCMP were called, and it turned out that this was a person of note who had multiple warrants out for his arrest. Citizens on Patrol is helping to improve Fort St. John, and it's people like Jackie and the other great volunteers that spend their time and energy that make our communities a better place to live. By harnessing the collective efforts of dedicated volunteers, it not only enhances our public safety in our communities, but also strengthens the bonds of community solidarity. In an era marked by uncertainty and division, this program stands as a testament for the enduring spirit of cooperation and resilience that define the residents of Fort St. John. My deepest gratitude goes out to all our local citizens on patrol in Fort St. John and throughout our communities across British Columbia. Thank you.
Member for Surrey Panorama.
This week marks the beginning of the holy month of Ramadan. Ramadan is a sacred and transformative month for Muslims, offering an opportunity for spiritual growth, self-discipline, and sacrifice. It is time for reflection on the values of kindness, compassion, and generosity. It's a time for introspection to bring out the best in all of us. People from all walks of life come together to pray, share meals, and strengthen the bonds of community, friendship, and understanding. Every Ramadan, I look forward to visiting masjids and families, joining in prayers and breaking of the fast, cherishing the opportunities to reflect on the values we share, the values that resonate deeply across the rich tapestry of our cultures in our province. Last year, the first ever iftar was held right here in the Legislature, and I look forward to once again celebrating with the community. This year, Ramadan comes at a painful time for many Muslims in my community and beyond because of the war in the Middle East. This holy month is a reminder of the importance of empathy, compassion, and gratitude. We have seen disturbing rise in Islamophobia. We condemn this hate. I know all of us do. And let us all commit to rooting out hate and ensuring everyone feels safe and supported. This holy month is a reminder for all of us to reflect on how we can build bridges. It is a reminder to be thankful for how fortunate we are to live in this beautiful province where we celebrate different faiths, communities, and the enduring spirit of harmony. Let us all, each and every one of us, commit to choosing love and peace. To everyone in the Muslim community in Surrey and beyond, Ramadan Mubarak.
Third Party House Leader.
Mr. Speaker, I rise today to address a critical issue facing our democratic processes: the urgent need to regulate the use of artificial intelligence, AI, and large language models in elections. In an area where technology wields immense power over public discourse, it's imperative that we take proactive measures to safeguard the integrity and fairness of our electoral system. AI and large language models possess the capability to generate vast amounts of content, disseminating information at unprecedented speed and scale. While this technology holds promise for innovation and communication, its unregulated use in elections poses significant risks to the very foundation of our democracy. One of the foremost concerns is the potential for AI-generated content to spread misinformation and disinformation, manipulating public opinion and undermining the trust in our electoral processes. With the ability to mimic human speech and fabricate information, AI algorithms can deceive voters and distort the truth, subverting democratic principles of informed decision-making. Moreover, the uncontrolled use of AI in elections exacerbates inequalities in political competition, granting undue advantage to those with access to advanced technology. Wealthy or powerful entities can exploit AI algorithms to amplify their voices and drown out dissent, further entrenching existing power imbalances in our society. To address these pressing challenges, we must enact comprehensive regulations to govern the use of AI in electoral campaigns. Such regulations should include stringent requirements for transparency and accountability, ensuring that AI-generated content is clearly identified and its sources are disclosed to the public. Additionally, mechanisms for oversight and enforcement are essential to prevent the misuse of AI and uphold the principles of fairness and equality in our electoral processes. As we approach the upcoming general election, it is incumbent upon us to prioritize the regulation of AI elections and protect the integrity of our democratic systems. Mr. Speaker, this content was 100% generated by ChatGPT.
Member for Coquitlam Burke Mountain.
Elders, seniors, grandparents, They play a critical role in our communities, providing care, knowledge, and wisdom. They deserve respect and support. And the number of seniors in BC is expected to rise significantly. Almost 22% of British Columbians will be over 65 by 2035. In Coquitlam Burke Mountain, Ken Kuhn has been actively helping seniors as the Tri-City Seniors Action Society's coordinator, which advocates for age-friendly community policies by working with city councils, health authorities, pharmacists, and local seniors organizations. They host well-attended forums like the Elder Abuse and Wellness Forum and healthcare, housing, and transportation forums with interesting speakers where nonprofits and local businesses connect with seniors. Ken sits on seniors advisory committees like Organizing Against Racism and Hate Network, Tri-Cities Healthier Communities Partnership, and Raising the Profile Project. Ken knows the value of socialization. He arranges regular coffee chats. He knows a free cup of coffee and mingling with familiar or new faces can often be the highlight of a senior's day. Ken produces a monthly newsletter with links to valuable services for seniors and a useful list of community events and government contacts. Coquitlam Burke Mountain has a large multicultural community of seniors, reflected in the Society's membership and activities. Over a third of the Tri-Cities population is over 50, and Ken is leading the way, helping seniors stay healthy, active, and connected with friends, families, and neighbors. He is wisely preparing us for the wave of seniors to come. In Ken's email signature is the famous quote by Margaret Mead, "Never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, it's the only thing that ever has." There's no doubt that Ken Kuhn is one of those thoughtful, committed citizens. And on behalf of the citizens he serves in our community, I'd like to recognize and thank Ken Kuhn for his exceptional service to seniors. Thank you, Speaker.
Madam Clerk.
Oral questions by members.
Leader of the Official Opposition.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, British Columbians are already paying the highest gas prices and the highest gas taxes in North America. The NDP have more than doubled the carbon tax, and on April 1st, the Premier plans to hike it by 23%, a cruel April Fool's joke on the public. And while the BC United opposition has repeatedly called for slashing the tax, this NDP Premier wants to hike the carbon tax yet again. So my question to the Premier, with British Columbians struggling to eat, heat, and house themselves, will this Premier spike the hike and cancel the planned 23% carbon tax hike on April the 1st?
Minister of Environment and Climate Change Strategy.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. And we know that British Columbians are struggling with inflation, with the high cost of living, and that's why we're taking many measures across many opportunities to support British Columbia families. British Columbia families are also deeply concerned about the impacts of climate change on their kids, on their grandkids, on the economy, on communities that face wildfires and floods, and they want to be assured that we're taking strong climate action. They want to do their part. And that's why we've structured the carbon tax in a way that returns money to low and middle income British Columbians, which of course would not happen if we ceased the carbon tax. What we do with the increases in the carbon tax is give 100% of it back to British Columbians in the climate action tax credit.
Leader of the Official Opposition, supplemental.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Well, Mr. Speaker, the fact is you can't tax your way to affordability, like this NDP government keeps trying to do. By every measure, life is more expensive under this Premier and the NDP, including grocery costs that are up 30%, visits to the food bank up 60% since they have been in power. Never before in the history of this province have so many people had to resort to using food banks. So again, to the Premier and this government, will they spike the tax hike and cancel the NDP's 23% carbon tax increase on April 1st? Yes or no?
Minister of Environment.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. What the Leader of the Opposition forgets, apparently, is that at one point he said his proudest moment in government was introducing the carbon tax. But maybe...
Members.
Maybe what he really meant when he said that...
Members. Minister.
Maybe what the Leader of the official opposition really meant by his proudest moment was when he used the carbon tax to give a $450 million tax cut to big business and the richest British Columbians. Mr. Speaker, Mr. Speaker, we've doubled the portion of the carbon tax going back to British Columbians in the Climate Action Tax Credit for low and middle income British Columbians. That's what we're doing for British Columbians, along with cutting ICBC rates, along with taking tolls of bridges, along with eliminating MSP premiums, all of which have been opposed by the opposition.
Member for Kamloops North Thompson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Let's remember that when the government changed, the first thing they did was remove revenue neutrality from the carbon tax and lifted the freeze at $30 a ton, which will now be $80 a ton, $50 increase, which is a more than doubling of the carbon tax, actually.
Good job.
So, Mr. Speaker, let's be clear that a single mom in British Columbia pays far more in carbon taxes than they get back. And in fact, an average BC family pays nearly $1,200 more in carbon taxes net than they do next door in Alberta. On April 1st, the cost of filling up at a gas station will rise again by 23% under this Premier. Will the NDP Premier spike the carbon tax hike on April 1st and give British Columbians the relief they need?
Minister of Environment.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Let me help the member opposite with a quote from his leader on September 23rd, 2023, and it goes like this. When we introduced North America's first revenue-neutral carbon tax back in 2008, if my memory serves me correctly, I was very proud to be part of the government that did that, because what we said was we were going to put a carbon tax on emissions because that's the market way to deal with something. If you want people to change behavior, you put a cost to it and you ask them to consider shifting their behavior. The difference, Mr. Speaker, between this government and their government is we take the carbon tax money and we give it back to British Columbians at twice the rate that they did. Honourable Speaker.
Members.
I'm sure British Columbians will notice, Honourable Speaker.
Members.
I'm sure British Columbians will notice that the members opposite think it's a laughing matter to give money back to British Columbians instead of to corporations.
Member for Kamloops North Thompson, supplemental.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Well, the difference is BC United will actually give real tax relief to British Columbians. We'll eliminate the provincial fuel tax, and we'll spike the Premier's planned carbon tax hikes, Mr. Speaker. You know, this Premier's double standards knows no bounds. The Minister talks about brakes for large industrial emitters, $450 million. He seems to forget he was the minister that signed off on an agreement with LNG Canada to give them a $600 million PST holiday. Does the Minister of Environment not remember signing that deal with LNG?
$600 million.
And Mr. Speaker, let's look at how this
hear the
government
question,
deals
please.
With
members. Members.
Let's look at how this government, this Premier deals with large industrial emitters. While they are insisting that British Columbians in their average households pay $80 a ton for carbon tax, this Premier is actually giving large industrial operations a break from paying any carbon tax. BC United thinks maybe regular British Columbians should get a bit of a break, just like the large industrial emitters that this Environment Minister seems to want to give a break. So if you heat your home with natural gas, the Premier is going to jack up your bill by 23% as well on April 1st. It's time, when life has never been more expensive, that this Premier spike the tax hike on April 1st and give British Columbians the same type of break they're willing to give large industrial emitters in this province.
Minister of Environment.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and I'm proud, as everyone in our government is proud, that we introduced a new output-based pricing system for large industrial emitters that sends an adequate price signal while maintaining competitiveness, and the result of that is it's been praised by industry and it's been praised by climate activists.
Members, it's good to enjoy the question period. It's wonderful, but we still have to go through it. Okay, let's hear the answer.
Honourable Speaker, we continue to take measures to support British Columbians every day, whether it's the BC Family Benefit, whether it is reducing and holding steady BC Hydro rates, whether it's reducing ICBC rates, whether it's supporting people to make the shift to electric heat pumps to have homes that are more comfortable and cost less in energy, and whether it is giving 100% of the increase in the carbon tax back to low and middle income British Columbians. Honourable Speaker, it's unfortunate, Honourable Speaker, that the Leader of the Opposition and the members opposite are willing to mortgage their kids' and their grandkids' future in the face of climate change instead of giving families in British Columbia support in so many ways. We have lowered taxes.
Members. Shh. We have lots of questions, more members. Just take it easy. Minister will conclude.
Let's just leave it at this, Mr. Speaker. A family with 2 kids earning $100,000 pays over a third less in provincial taxes than they did when those members were on this side of the House.
House Leader of the Third Party.
Yeah, Mr. Speaker, hydropower is central to meeting our Clean BC targets, but the electricity source is threatened by drought, Mr. Speaker. Last year, dams were at historic lows due to sustained periods of drought. BC was importing 20% of our electricity, Mr. Speaker. From what we've heard, the delay of flooding Site C wasn't because of bear dens, but it was because of drought. There isn't enough water, Mr. Speaker. Relying on hydro to meet our net zero emissions objectives is risky in a fast-changing climate. Conserving energy for British Columbians should be this government's top priority, not powering LNG facilities. To the Minister of Energy, why is she prioritizing limited electricity for nascent fracked gas industry in a climate emergency?
Minister of Energy and Mines.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Well, of course, we've just heard a series of questions around the fact that our communities and people are facing climate challenges unlike at any time before. People are concerned, they want to take action, and they want to do the right thing. Drought has impacted BC Hydro's reservoirs, but over the past 15 years, BC Hydro has been a net importer half of the time, a net exporter of energy the other half of the time. It's incredibly important that we build the resilience of this system. We're so fortunate to have a backbone of a resilient hydroelectric system that we will be diversifying by adding in renewables with a call for power this spring to see more energy added to the grid to help people make the switch to electric vehicles, the switch to electric heat pumps, electrifying industry, bringing down our emissions. Mr. Speaker, we're going to stay focused on that work with BC Hydro, seeing the Utilities Commission just approve their 20-year integrated resource plan, and knowing that we're planning for the future, planning for climate change, building up a resilient system to support people.
Third party House Leader supplemental.
Drought also impacts fracking in the Northeast, Mr. Speaker. The BC Energy Regulator has warned that the Premier's fracking buddies that there's going to be a limited water supply this summer. Frackers use billions of liters of water each year, 5.2 billion in 2021 to be exact. If they're not hijacking it from creeks and streams, Mr. Speaker, they're paying pennies for it. And while the Premier publicly hallucinates about a net zero LNG industry, that's just the greenhouse gas emissions and not the only environmental issue, Mr. Speaker. More LNG means more fracking and tens of billions of more liters of fresh water. We are truly a company town, Mr. Speaker, diverting limited water to increase corporate profits while the Climate Readiness Minister pleads with British Columbians to take shorter showers, and the Parliamentary Secretary on Watersheds desperately is trying to save dying salmon. Friends, we have a water crisis in this government's grip with phantasmagoria. My question is to the Energy Minister. When is she and her colleagues concerned about a livable planet going to stand up to this madness?
Minister of Energy and Mines.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Well, once again, the member raises some very serious issues around drought and the steps that our government is taking to help prepare for what could be a very difficult summer. The BC Energy Regulator has already issued notice to gas operations in the Northeast to reduce or, in some cases, eliminate their water use. Industry takes this very seriously, and they're taking the action that's necessary. Mr. Speaker, my colleague, the Minister of Water, Lands and Resource Stewardship, of course, is leading the work too on planning for the future, undertaking water licensing decisions, and making decisions together with First Nations, communities, and industry so that we can accommodate the changes that we're seeing. Mr. Speaker, we're going to continue to do this. We're going to continue to put people first, supporting them with affordable hydro rates, supporting them with affordability altogether in their lives, making good decisions because we know that people want to take action on climate. They want to see responsible industry. That's what's taking place here. We're going to stay focused on it. Thank you.
Fourth Party House Leader.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. April 1st is just around the corner. And I would warn the people at home, do not be fooled. Do not make the joke on you. We have the leader of the opposition that it's his proudest moment to bring in the carbon tax. And then we have a party over here that is proud to raise it. There's only one party in this House that's willing to axe and spike the tax, and that's the Conservative Party of British Columbia.
Members. Members.
Speaker.
Just a second.
Mr. Speaker, this past week we've seen a movement
Let's hear
of
the question,
premiers
please.
across this country uniting together to fight for Canadians who can no longer afford this punishing carbon tax. Seven premiers have now signed letters calling on Justin Trudeau to axe and spike the tax. Mr. Speaker,
Members.
BC is a holdout on this great Canadian story. And there is a pattern of stubbornness by this Premier here in BC. We're the only province that refuses to hire back nurses than doctors that we desperately need. This BC NDP
Members,
Premier
let's listen to the question,
continue
please.
to burden everyday hard-working British Columbians with this punishing cruel carbon tax. My question, Mr. Speaker, to the BC Premier, will you finally do right by hard-working British Columbians, make life more affordable by spiking and hacking and axing this hard carbon tax?
Minister of Environment.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. And at least the fourth party is consistent. Their leader doesn't believe that climate change is a crisis, or perhaps that it may not be caused by human and industrial activity. We believe differently, and we're backed up by virtually 98% of scientists around the world. Unfortunately, the official opposition, in their race to win back votes from the Conservatives, is abandoning any pretense of taking action on climate change. Honourable Speaker, our Premier has been absolutely clear. British Columbia is going to stay on track with our Clean BC plan, which includes the carbon tax and which includes substantial rebates to British Columbians, including 100% of the increase going back as part of the Climate Action Tax Credit, along with a host of other supports that we have offered British Columbians for the last 7 years.
Fourth Party House Leader.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. The only thing that this government is on track is driving hardworking British Columbians into the poorhouse. Mr. Speaker, this carbon tax was introduced by the leader of BC United, although they'll probably go on to and try to deny that on Chinese social media. But now, Premier Eby's socialist NDP are making it worse by increasing it. Mr. Speaker, British Columbians are hurting. They're having a tough time putting food on the table. This NDP Liberal carbon tax doesn't make just fuel more expensive. It makes everything more expensive. It adds to the cost of gas, groceries, heating, food, rent, and even furniture more expensive. That's why the Conservative Party of BC is calling on this NDP Premier to read the room and do right by hard-working British Columbians by axing the tax and spiking the hike. Mr. Speaker,
Question.
to the Minister of Poverty Reduction, how many British Columbians have to be taxed into abject poverty before this government ends the BC carbon tax once and for all?
Minister of Environment.
Honourable Speaker, we understand that British Columbians are hurting, and we understand that British Columbians needed support from day one in 2017. That's why we took tolls off the bridges. That's why we cut ICBC rates. That's why we eliminated the Medical Services Plan premium, the largest middle-class tax cut in British Columbia history. That's why we've reduced taxes by more than a third for families making $100,000 a year. That's why we give the BC Family Benefit. That's why we give Climate Action Tax Credit. That's why we have a whole host of measures that support British Columbians in their day-to-day lives every single day, and we are not going to stop doing that.
Member for Abbotsford West.
Horrific emergency room wait times. Delays in cancer care that are, quite frankly, costing people their lives. Ambulances that take hours upon hours to get to seriously injured people. More and more families left without a family physician. Every time the health minister is confronted by the deplorable and worsening state of BC's healthcare system, he does two things. First of all, he denies there's a problem. And secondly, he points to mythical budget cuts to healthcare under the previous government. Mr. Speaker, for the record,
Let's hear the question, members. Thank you, members. Members?
Between 2001 and 2017, the healthcare budget doubled from $10 billion to $20 billion, Mr. Speaker. It went up every single year. Quite frankly, I'm getting tired of the health minister manufacturing phony facts to explain away the deplorable state of healthcare that has been created under his watch and this government's watch. The only actual budget cut this minister needs to explain is the one that he and his ministry signed off on to cut funding to BC's retinal specialists by 32%, Mr. Speaker, and as a result, 25,000 British Columbians are in jeopardy of being impacted by this cut. Will the minister confirm
that it was his ministry that signed off and on a unilaterally imposed 32% cut to the retinal specialists in British Columbia, and that as a result, they are withdrawing from a program which will mean that British Columbian patients, 25,000 of them, will be obliged to pay for that service if they want to get it.
Minister of Health.
Well, thank you very much, Honourable Speaker. And I would say, first of all, that in terms of nursing, we added 6,500 nurses in BC last year. I just want to... These are numbers from the college, Honourable Speaker. First year, the Leader of the Opposition was Minister of Health. The year started with 42,122 registered nurses in BC. It ended with 40,712. Then it went down to 40,149. The only health minister in history to cut registered nurses in British Columbia. Now, Honourable Speaker.
Members.
Now, Honourable Speaker, the ophthalmological division of the doctors of BC has made proposals to change tariffs. This is not a cut in the resources being assigned, not $1, Honourable Speaker. The member will know that retinal surgeons, and this is the issue that the doctors of BC have been raising for some time, on average, bill to MSP $2.8 million a year per, right? That's the average amount. And so the ophthalmological division has made a proposal to bring changes. It's our intention to continue. These services are free to British Columbians. They'll continue to be free to British Columbians. And of course, we're working with specialists and with ophthalmologists in BC to ensure that BC continues to have these services provided for people. That's not going to change. It's not going to change before April 1st. It's not going to change after April 1st. We're determined to do this. And I think the actions of the doctors of BC are reasonable actions, and we're working with them and with all doctors in BC to make sure that people keep getting access to services, and they will.
Abbotsford West supplemental.
Mr. Speaker, the minister wants to avoid one inconvenient fact and is wrong on a second fact. He wants to ignore the fact that the 32% cut to the retinal specialists could not and would not have been made. That proposal to the Tariff Commission could not and would not have been made without the acquiescence of he and his ministry, Mr. Speaker. That's the first thing. The second thing he wants to try and pretend in the House today is that it'll be business as usual after March the 31st. His ministry sent a letter, Mr. Speaker, to those retinal specialists asking how many of them would continue in the program to allow for business to continue as usual. Not one of them has agreed, Mr. Speaker, to do that in the face of that 32% cut. As a result, there is nothing this minister can do to control the behavior of those doctors once they have withdrawn from the program, and that is scheduled to happen in 2 weeks. When that happens, Mr. Speaker, patients will be obliged to write checks, which is not something they've had to do for many, many years, in order to receive treatment that will prevent them from going blind. The minister has it within his control to address this issue, to reverse a 32% cut that was instituted under his watch. Will he do that?
Minister of Health.
Honourable Speaker, we're acting in the interests of BC patients. That's what this is about. As, by the way, are BC doctors, Honourable Speaker, in addressing these issues. Of course, we're working with all the parties to ensure, Honourable Speaker, that British Columbians are not affected. That's the role of the Ministry of Health and the Minister of Health. But I would say this, Honourable Speaker, that in this case, as the member will know, this is not a 32% cut. There's not a single thing being cut from this budget. This is a discussion of tariffs, and the member will know $2.8 million, the median income on MSP, Honourable Speaker. In other words, Honourable Speaker, average income is the equivalent of 6 oncologists, Honourable Speaker, right, for each one. And so there is a discussion, a legitimate discussion around payment, which is going on in BC. And we're taking action, working with the whole community of people who are ophthalmologists in BC to ensure that British Columbians continue to get the free service they deserve, and they will.
Member for Prince George Valemount.
Thank you very much. For over a week, this Premier has been missing in action when it comes to investigating anti-Semitism in his own government, caucus, and party. Even his own head of anti-racism has a history of anti-Semitism. And now there are painful stories of anti-Semitism in the healthcare system. And I quote, "A faculty member at my hospital asked me to prove that October 7th massacre actually happened. They harassed and intimidated me. They made me feel fearful and anxious to come to work at the hospital." When it came to anti-Indigenous racism in the healthcare system, an independent investigation was called quickly and correctly, but the Premier is now missing in action. How can Jewish people feel safe in our healthcare system while the Premier refuses to call an independent investigation into anti-Semitism in his own caucus, party, and government?
Government House Leader.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker, and the member is correct. We have been canvassing this issue this week. We have answered the questions the members asked, which is everybody in this House is committed to addressing anti-Semitism, hate of any form in our province. We know there's fear in the community. We understand that. The Premier met with leaders from the Jewish community last week. He's meeting with leaders of the Jewish community this week. Since October 7th, Honourable Speaker, we have taken steps to ensure that the community has more supports. But we know there's more work to do. That's why the Premier is going to continue to meet with leaders in the coming days. Honourable Speaker, I think it's upon all of us to ensure that everyone, no matter who they love, no matter where they come from, no matter what their religion, feels safe and welcome to British Columbia. That's something we've been committed to since we formed government. It's something we're committed to do every single day going forward.
Prince George Valemount, supplemental.
Well, in fact, what the minister said is incorrect. The Premier has not agreed to do everything he needs to do to deal with anti-Semitism because he isn't even willing to deal with it in his own caucus. The Premier's unwilling to fight anti-Semitism in the public service, apparently, whose stories we have heard. He's apparently unwilling to fight anti-Semitism in our K-12 and post-secondary education system. And now we have horrible stories of what's happening in healthcare, and the Premier's unwilling to fight anti-Semitism in the healthcare system. And the most shocking thing of all is that the Premier is unwilling to fight anti-Semitism with his own hand-picked Assistant Deputy Minister for Anti-Racism. It is unbelievable that someone who blamed Jews for losing her dream job, that is unbelievable that she should be in the public service, much less having an anti-racism role and providing advice to this government and this Premier. British Columbians want this Premier to do the right thing. That starts with looking in the mirror, dealing with the issues that we have heard about in this House day after day after day. Perhaps the minister can tell us this. Why is the Premier stubbornly refusing to call an independent investigation into something as horrifying as the stories we hear day after day after day? So will he do the right thing and call an independent investigation today?
Government House Leader.
Honourable Speaker, since October 7th, we have been taking considerable steps to ensure people can feel safe in communities. October 30th, we launched the mandatory Holocaust education in our schools. The Premier in this building made a Premier statement about the rise of anti-Semitism. November 15th, we've provided additional security funding for communities to make sure that they feel safe in the place that they worship. February 16th this year, the BC Prosecution Service updated their hate crime policy so we can prosecute those that come forward, cases that come forward where they're perpetrating hate in our communities. Mr. Speaker, we take all forms of hate very seriously. And I'll reiterate this. It doesn't matter who you love. It It doesn't matter what you believe, where you come from, what your religion, everyone should feel safe in British Columbia. That's something we've been committed to since we formed government, and it's something we're committed to going forward.
The bell ends the question period. Madam Clerk.
Orders of the day.
Government House Leader.
Thank you so much, Honourable Speaker. In the main chamber, called Committee of the Whole, Bill 10, Commercial Transport Amendment Act. In the Douglas, for a committee room called Committee of Supply, Ministry of Forests. In the Birch committee room called Committee of Supply for Ministry of Environment and Climate Change Strategy.
Committee chairs.
I'll call the committee to order. We're dealing with Bill 10, Commercial Transport Amendment Act 2024. Shall Clause 1 pass? Recognizing the member for Surrey White Rock.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I want to thank the Minister and his staff for going through this with us at committee stage on Bill 10 here. We both made remarks yesterday in this House on second reading regarding Bill 10. The Minister did talk about consultation that was done, so can the Minister outline who was consulted besides BC Trucking Association? Can he provide that to the House today?
Minister.
Thank you, Madam Chair. To the members, so some of the organizations that were involved in the consultation that led up to the drafting of the legislation before the House this afternoon include the West Coast Trucking Association, the BC Trucking Association, BC Association of Chiefs of Police, Chief Judges of the BC Courts, and the Insurance Corporation of British Columbia.
Member.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you to the Minister for that list. The Minister also talked about, UNDRIP yesterday in his comments. He talked about consultation of First Nations. Can the Minister name the First Nations that were consulted for Bill 10?
Minister.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. So as required, an assessment of this legislation as it relates to alignment with the UN Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People was conducted, and it was found that the bill does not uniquely affect the Indigenous rights described in the UN Declaration, and that determination was made working with the Indigenous Legal Relations Division of the Ministry of the Attorney General.
Member.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I believe in the remarks yesterday made by the Minister, he said First Nations were consulted. So I asked what nations specifically were consulted. Did that answer mean none? Or can you name the nations that were consulted?
Minister.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I was mistaken in my remarks yesterday because what I had intended to say was that the analysis was done in terms of conformity with UNDRIPA requirements for government, and that was done internally, not externally with First Nations.
Member.
Thank you, Madam Chair. With respect to the Minister, that seems like a pretty big mistake to make, that he does not know that nations were either consulted or not consulted when he's making second reading remarks. Through here, I live in White Rock, South Surrey. It's Semiahmoo Nation. They have part of Highway 99. We talk about Tawasin First Nation. We talk about the overpass strike on Highway 17. And the implications, the Minister stood in this House and said First Nations were consulted. So again, is he incorrect in making that statement?
Minister.
Thank you. Yes, no, just corrected the error. And the error was made in good faith because of the amount of Indigenous consultation our government does as a matter of course on all sorts of program development, delivery, granting programs, major infrastructure projects. But on this bill, and I acknowledge the mistake, the analysis was done that there was no distinct Indigenous perspective or clause in the UNDRIP legislation that was unique to those communities, and that the legislation is in the interest of all British Columbians, both non-Indigenous and Indigenous peoples alike.
Member.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So just to make sure I'm clear on this, the Minister got direction from the Attorney General's office based on UNDRIP that First Nations consultation was not necessary on Bill 10.
Minister.
Yes, that's correct, and that happens with a lot of statutes that are debated in this legislature. But the requirement that is new, post-UNDRIP, is that analysis must be done.
Member.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just straight up to the minister. How did he not know that when he's making his remarks in the House? That he says First Nations consultation's been complete, and it's non-existent. So how does a mistake like that happen?
Minister.
Thank you. So the mistake was that the analysis was required to be done about consultation. I was mistaken that consultation had followed from that.
Member.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair. What I took from the minister's remarks yesterday, in good faith, we've seen 35 overpass strikes happen under this minister's watch since he's been Minister of Transportation. It's a pretty staggering number, and I think the minister would agree with that. We think 1 is a staggering number. We think 35 is substantial into the millions and millions of dollars of damage that this has caused. And thankfully, we haven't seen a fatality from it. But the minister did talk about the need to do all this consultation was one of the reasons why we haven't seen this legislation brought forward until 2 days ago. And so when we left this House yesterday, I actually thought First Nations consultation was one of the reasons why there's been such a delay. We haven't had 35 overpass strikes in the last month. We've had them since 2021. So to the minister, from December of 2021 to today, we've had 35 overpass strikes. And 48 hours ago, this minister introduces legislation. So from that time in December of 2021 to today, where we've had 35 overpass strikes, what has been the delay in getting this legislation to the House?
Minister.
So there's a couple of things I would say in response to that, and actions that have been taken since December 2021, working with industry on overpass collisions that we were seeing in the province, and looking at other jurisdictions as well. We have looked to, for example, add to our advance warning systems that we have on Highway 1 and Highway 62. and have combined our research on their effectiveness with other jurisdictions that also have these on their highways. We worked primarily through CVSE, the Commercial Vehicle Safety Enforcement Agency, and the trucking industry about stepped up enforcement, what that would look like, where it should be, and how it would be received by industry in terms of widespread adoption and compliance. That was a big part of our work over the last 24 months. We also brought in regulations similar to Ontario to reduce the number of excessive speed collisions where excessive speed would seem to be a determining factor. So speed limiters coming into effect was introduced. There was consultation on that as well with industry, of course. Electronic logging devices as well, looking at some of the potential causes of overpass collisions that may have related to driver error based on driver fatigue. So that requirement to bring in a system of logging a truck driver's hours and having that data collected and analyzed was also a new change that we made. I would say the most significant one that was announced in 2023, though, was the progressive enforcement regime that was brought into place that linked to safety investigations on an incident where there was a collision with infrastructure, and giving government, the CVSE, the power to suspend an entire carrier's fleet and move beyond just the vehicle involved in the collision, if that was warranted by the facts of the investigation, or if that was warranted as a precaution during the investigation until the investigation's conclusion. Those were new powers that were brought into effect, and it also has led to the elimination of certificates that allow some carriers to do business that were found to be the most egregious. Now, I will say this, we have looked at other jurisdictions where there are overpass collisions. None of them are debating legislation like Bill 10. Probably none of them want to, and neither do we. But having tried a number of things to bring greater compliance, to train drivers, there was additional training resources put in there, to create economic penalties and deterrence through a different enforcement model, a stronger enforcement model. We are still left with the belief that if we ever have another collision of an overpass involving reckless driver behavior and the facts established in that lend themselves to prosecution, we now have a new avenue, which is to go to court with very steep fines and even the possibility of imprisonment. And I would say that was one thing that we wanted to be clear with industry about, is that if we are going to introduce potential jail time for somebody who has committed a new offense that will be that is defined in this legislation, you want to make sure that those tens of thousands of commercial truck drivers, instead of feeling targeted, are feeling supported, because you could get a fairly shocking conclusion out of that, and that the professional driving workforce in BC is in a state of crisis. It is not. What we were trying to deal with in a very laser-focused, pinpointed way here is focusing on a very small number, and we have data, that's why we started collecting data in 2021, a very small number of drivers who've exhibited reckless, dangerous behavior, and some of them have been involved in repeated incidents. The 99.99% of truck drivers are not being criminalized by this bill. Only those that are involved in egregious accidents that could cause bodily harm or death and are then supported by a police investigation that lends to Crown Counsel recommending charges. Those are the only ones that will ever that we will ever seek prosecution of, and it remains to be seen in future whether a case like this will be in the public interest, whether there will be somebody who fits the profile of who we would like to get out of the industry to not have behind the wheel of a large commercial vehicle that poses a safety risk to other highway users. We'll see. Time will tell. But it is a valuable deterrent message nonetheless. And the reason we consulted organizations like the West Coast Trucking Association and the BC Trucking Association was to make sure that it fit the test and that it was supported by industry. And I'm pleased to say it was enthusiastically supported by industry, because they don't want any reputational damage to the work that they do, the safe distribution of goods that they conduct on our road networks each and every day in massive volumes in every community around BC. They want, and every profession has them, they want those who are doing a poor job, who are not adhering to the standards that they are professionally bound to uphold each and every minute that they're on the road, they want them out of the industry as well.
Member.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Minister, for that clarification. So when we're talking about the amendments that we are debating today, is that strictly just to overpass strikes? Is this something that can be utilized in other areas of infractions? What would those infractions be, or are we just talking about infrastructure strikes at this point?
Minister.
Thank you. So to the member, Bill 10 will apply to all offences that are in the Commercial Transport Act that are outlined in that legislation and regulation related to the CTA. This can be contraventions of permits based on dimensions, weight, height, those sorts of things, operating without permit. So it doesn't necessarily have to involve a collision. It could be, for example, damage sustained with a vehicle that's significantly over the weight permitted or allowed, that would maybe damage a bridge structure. We can think of lots of hypothetical examples that are not out of the realm. I'll let the member imagine some other things, but that I think is the most direct answer to his question, that all offenses outlined in the CTA will be subject to these amendments contained in Bill 10. I would also just offer a comment at this point that there are other criminal contraventions that are outlined for penalty and possible prosecution in the Motor Vehicle Act and, of course, in the Criminal Code generally.
Member.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We've seen before when the minister, I think, well-intentioned, rolled out some penalties specifically to companies. We saw that there was significant loopholes that obviously frustrated the minister, the premier, I think the general public, and that was basically dealing with other jurisdictions, primarily in that case it was Alberta. So has the minister consulted other jurisdictions in terms of how we recruit fines if they're coming from another province, another state, if infrastructure was struck, whether it was a trucking company or a truck driver from Washington State or Alberta? Has the minister made sure that we've tightened those loopholes up to make sure that British Columbians are able to get or able to ensure that those that need to be held accountable will be held accountable, which is the intention of this legislation?
Minister.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would say this to the member, the reason that we have begun a national discussion, and BC has put this on the agenda with our counterparts across the country and with the federal government, is in the hope that we will shift away from a decentralized safety certificate model that Canada has, that other countries do not have, that has considerable disadvantages around enforcement for out-of-province carriers committing violations in British Columbia. Right now, we have the ability to share information through the Commercial Vehicle Safety Enforcement Division with, in the Alberta example, Alberta Transportation. That sometimes leads to that agency taking some limited forms of action in Alberta, but they have to walk a very legal fine line in that regard, and that's why having federal powers in Canada would be a game changer for those, and it is a small number of companies, but those that are operating solely because they were enforced upon in another province and moving their location to another province and then working back in the province with which they were either suspended or prohibited from doing business. Nevertheless, we think that's a loophole that is important to close, and there certainly are other models that more effectively have a compliance regime. The United States is one obvious example where the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration is responsible for commercial trucking that's interstate in all parts of the country. And there would be a European Union system too that would be worth acknowledging. Having said that, we are looking forward to the Canadian Council of Motor Transport Administrators renewing interest, because there was a period of time, about a decade or more ago, that this decentralization of enforcement problem was looked at with some enthusiasm, and it waned. And we think it's time, more than ever, given the volumes of interprovincial trucking activity happening, to come up finally with perhaps a role for Transport Canada similar to their lead responsibilities on the aviation industry or for railway safety, to also have similar powers as it relates to interprovincial commercial trucking. The last point I would make, because I think it touches on the member's question, is around collection for, let's say, roadside fines for unsafe driving behavior by a commercial trucker with a different plate on their vehicle inside British Columbia. That falls to ICBC's collection division. They obviously vigorously look to collect those fines no matter what the person's address is or where they live in Canada.
Member.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So just give an example. So if, let's just say, a commercial truck plated from Washington State strikes an overpass, this act gives the ministry the power to levy, let's just take the maximum $100,000 fine. Trucker goes back. Trucker goes back to Washington State, company resides in Washington State. How will the ministry recoup that $100,000 fine?
Minister.
Thank you. So, Madam Chair, the content of Bill 10, these amendments outline a new avenue to impose fines and/or imprisonment terms. And these are new powers, but ones that are included for other types of offenses in other types of offenses. So it's a court-imposed fine, so there would have to be a court process, a successful prosecution. But the short answer to the member's question is yes, we can prosecute a U.S. driver if we went through Crown Counsel and there was a recommendation to lay charges for somebody living outside our borders. It would involve things like appearance notices and those sorts of things. But I think the member can probably think of examples where Canadians abroad have committed serious accidents that have harmed or killed citizens abroad. And they are obviously criminally charged in those circumstances as well. So it would be similar to that. Again, we haven't used this legislation, and I'm answering hypothetical scenarios, but I think that's exactly how it would work.
Member.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you to the Minister. The Minister talked about the consultation that he's done externally, but just, we talked about ICBC, just referenced, obviously, the Attorney General's office referenced, Solicitor General, I imagine, was referenced when we're talking about 18 months imprisonment. So can the Minister just highlight the consultation that's been done with each respective ministry in regards to Bill 10?
Minister.
I wonder if I might just ask the member to repeat the last part of the question there. We had trouble hearing it for some reason.
Yeah, happy to do that. So we've mentioned ICBC. This legislation discusses the potential for 18 months imprisonment. So I'm imagining that the Solicitor General's office, the Attorney General's office were consulted on this. So were they consulted in the drafting of this legislation?
Minister.
Thank you. So our ministry worked with the Attorney General Ministry on the drafting of the legislation, and we worked with the Ministry of Public Safety, Solicitor General, the Crown Agency Secretariat, and the Insurance Corporation of BC on the intent and purpose of Bill 10.
Shall Clause 1 pass? So ordered. Minister.
Madam Chair, I move that the committee rise, report progress, and ask leave to sit again.
Members, you've heard the motion. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say nay. Motion passed. This committee is adjourned.
Committee Chair.
The Committee on Bill 10 reports progress and asks leave to sit again.
When shall the committee sit again, Government House Leader?
Next sitting.
So ordered. Committee Chair.
Mr. Speaker, Committee of Supply Section A reports progress and all estimates of the Ministry of Forests and asks Lee to sit again.
When shall the committee sit again?
Next sitting.
So ordered. Committee Chair.
Honorable Speaker, Committee of Supply Section C reports progress on the estimates of the Ministry of Environment and Climate Change Strategy and seeks leave to sit again.
Government House Leader. When shall the committee sit again?
Next sitting.
So ordered. Government House Leader.
I move that the House now adjourn.
Members, you heard the question to adjourn the House. All those in favor indicate aye. Opposed? Motion carried. This House stands adjourned until 1 p.m. this afternoon.